Hello, my friends. William here with the Grand Duke Dmitri 1915 diary entry. Diary series. I'm just looking at the entries here, which is why I said that. I see that I forgot to put them in large size lettering because I don't see that well, so I'm just making them bigger. Okay, we have a full slate today. Yesterday we had Dmitri at Tsarskoye Selo to celebrate his father's birthday, and we also had him going to Gatchina and meeting some of Misha's friends. They all have Russified but non-Russian names. All the friends, I forgot to say that yesterday, who were at Gatchina, which is consistent with what Misha's job was. He was the commander of the Savage Division, which drew its officers and men from Central Asia. And there was this Princess Irevanskaya there, and you know Dmitri was interested in her, so she will appear again, and we'll show you a little bit more about her. Meanwhile, we'll see if today we can finish up with September, because we have 3 days left, the 28th and 29th and the 30th, and that they're a little bit on the long side for these particular diary entries, so we'll see if we can get through them. And I also have some additional material, although nothing that we're going to pause on. It's funny, it's almost like the story of the elf and the shoemakers, who when the shoemaker goes to bed, the elves come and make the shoes to help him out. And yesterday, this suddenly appeared with, I've been going through my books, and I put a box of books in the living room, and I thought I'd gone through them all, but almost miraculously this morning, there was this on the top of that pile of books, and it is an article by David R. Jones, an academic, and from Nova Scotia, and the article is entitled "Nicholas II and the Supreme Command: An Investigation of Motives." So looking at the sort of the conflict between Nikolasha and his people on the one hand, and Nicholas II on the other hand, who decided to, as you can see, I spilled something of it on it, par for the course. That goes back quite a long time. That's material I was using when I was working on my on my dissertation. And then I also had a look. I have the 3-volume series of diary entries of Maurice Paleolog, the French ambassador. This is volume 2, and I got these for giving a talk about Dmitri at a royalty conference in England, and the sponsor and host of the conference happened to own a bookstore. And so he gave me the option of being paid in money or being paid in books, and I think quite wisely I chose this 3-volume set because they're not easy to come by. So I was trying to find today the section where he describes Dmitri trying to intervene with Nicholas to dissuade him from taking over at Stavka. I couldn't find it. I was skimming things quickly, and I'm sure I overlooked it, but what I did find, then I went and looked at the specific diaries entries for the 28th and the 29th and the 30th of September, and what I did find is that Russia was absolutely in turmoil. Things were not only going bad with respect to the military and the war, but they were going bad with respect to the government. The Rasputin issue was very, very prominent, very much in the fore at that time, and people were just fed up with it. They were just disgusted with it, and some of Nicholas's ministers wrote a joint letter to him on the 28th, I believe, saying, you know, the government is going downhill. The prime minister, Goromykin, is a hopeless individual. I believe he was one of those chosen by Rasputin. And on the 30th, Alexander replies to this letter very angrily and just tells them to mind their own business. And so, Dmitri was in Petrograd at this time, and Nicholas was in Petrograd at this time, even though he'd taken over at Stavka. And, Dmitri knew, believe me, exactly what was going on. And so, as we've talked about before, this is the lead-up to the Rasputin assassination. Although it's interesting that in none of these diary entries while he's in Petrograd does he mention Felix Yusupov. So the actual conspiracy, that would be coming later. All right, I've talked so much, maybe we won't get through the end of September, but here we go, 28th September / 11th October. In the morning, I found out about the death of Pushin. I don't know when they'll be bringing the body. Lunch at Yelagin, Mikhin, Kirill, Ksenia, club, tea at Erevanskaya's, dined at Papa's, evening with Princess Erevanskaya. Okay, so who's Pushin? Well, pretty much a non-entity as far as history goes, but he was important to Dmitri. Vsevolodovich Pushin. He was important to Dmitri because he was a horse guards officer, and all of the guards regiments, and maybe the non-guards regiments as well, were very, very close-knit. It was a lifelong thing. Even after the revolution, they would still be getting together in France, and some of in Belgium, some of them that had settled elsewhere, I'm sure, came to these events that they had where they got together. So Pushin was a fellow officer, and he was killed on the day before Dmitri wrote this, on the 27th September. And so the horse guards were at the front, and Dmitri was not. Dmitri had gotten this assignment to headquarters, which made him a very, very lucky young man. Anyway, we can talk about the ethics of that, but I won't go into that. Yeah, anyway, he finds out that Pushin, who was a captain who had the same rank as Dmitri and was 3 years older than Dmitri, had been killed the day before, and this is important to him. Okay, Yelagin was the palace where the Dowager Empress lived. So Dmitri doesn't mention her, but it's implicit that this lunch at the palace would be hosted by her, unless it was hosted by Ksenia, Grand Duchess Ksenia, her eldest daughter, who I think kept very close to Mother. But anyway, so we see who's there. Mikhin is there, Kirill is there, Ksenia is there. And these are all people, along with Dmitri and the Dowager Empress herself, who are very, very concerned about what's going on in Russia and in the government and with Nicholas and Alexandra, and very anti-Rasputin. So it makes sense that they would get together. Ksenia and Dmitri always liked each other, unlike Ksenia or Dmitri and Olga. Anyway, moving on from that, there was this little family confab there, and Nicholas and Alexandra, as I mentioned previously, were becoming more and more isolated from their own family. Okay, so then, well, of course Dmitri goes to the club, because he wouldn't not go to the club when he's in Petrograd. It's his happy place, so to speak. But between after lunch, he goes to the club, then to have tea at Erevanskaya's. So I don't know if he'd even met her before going to Gachina, but anyway, he's interested, obviously. Her name, I'm not interested in the sense of marriage. He was not looking to get married, but, well, and she was married. This was my point before. She knew Misha, through her husband. who was in the Savage Division, I believe. And her name was Inna Alexandrovna. And yeah, or was it her brother who was a friend of Misha's? I'm pretty sure it was her husband. Let me look. Yeah, she was the wife of this guy. And, you know, but who knows what Dmitri was up to. But anyway, he went to her place, then back to Tsarskaya to have dinner at his father's, then back to see and spend the evening with Princess Yerevanskaya, so we'll keep an eye on that. And let's move on to the 29th, and here we go, 29th September / 12th October, lunch in Tsarskaya at Papa's, Maria, conversation about the Germans, nothing about politics. At 2 o'clock to Nikki. Taneyev was there, to Voyekov's, with the Sovereign and Alex to Petrograd, home, shopping with Shagubatov, then club, dinner at Benkendorf's, her brother. Pushin's body hasn't been brought. Okay, he's still waiting for that. So this is very interesting. He's spending much more time at Tsarskaya with his father and Maria than he did previously when he was in Petrograd. And, you know, this is, I think, directly because of this concern that Russia is hurtling toward the abyss, towards the revolution. And Paul was very progressive-minded for a Romanov. Dmitri was, as we know. But Dmitri says that the conversation was about the Germans. So was it about the German military, or was it just about Germans in general? And of course, Paul's mother had been born in Germany, part of a German ducal, well, royal family, part of, okay, not the emperor's family, but one of the grand ducal families in Germany. And Paul spent a fair amount of time in Germany. So they're talking about the Germans. Dmitri says, and this is important, nothing about politics. So today they're letting that drop. They're not bringing that up. Okay, then he's already in Tsarskaya. He goes to see Nikki, and no longer calling him uncle. He's a grown man now, Dmitri, that is. So he's dropped the uncle for his various relatives, and Nikki is Nikki. Taneyev was there, a man of 65, the father of Anna Verubova, Alexander Sergeyevich Taneyev. It's not surprising that he was there. He was the head of Nicholas's chancellery. And then Dmitri says, K Voyekovu. Let's see. So what does that mean? It means that he and Nicholas, went to see Voyekov, who was General Vladimir Nikolaevich Voyekov, a military man, but the court commandant at that time, and the same age as Nicholas himself, and someone whose name is associated in my mind with something sinister and negative. But I just didn't have time to go and dig into my disorganized notes and all of that sort of thing. Or I don't know, I guess I could have Googled him. Anyway, he was around, and either Dmitri or Nicholas went to see him. And if it was just Dmitri, that would be very interesting indeed. But I think not. I think it was with Nicholas. And the next thing we know, Nicholas is no longer Nicky, but he's the Sovereign. The Sovereign and Alex, kind of an interesting juxtaposition, well, not juxtaposition, that Nicholas is called the Sovereign in this instance, and Alex is just Alex. And they give him a ride home, so to speak. I assume they took the train, and they had the royal carriage, and so he went along with them. So, he's not estranged from them. And Nicholas really loved Dmitri, and, Alex would have known that he was very, very anti-Rasputin, so there may have been some tension. But he is, he's spending time Well, he's assigned to headquarters when Nicholas is at headquarters, and Nicholas liked to have him nearby. And if you've read Nicholas and Alexandra's correspondence from this time, Alex was just consistently trying to get Dmitri away from Nicholas. Anyway, Shalubatov is back. Dmitri's adjutant or former adjutant. They're kind of buddies. They hang around a lot. They go shopping together. Who knows what they were looking for. And then he goes off not to Princess Erevanskaya's, but to Countess Benkendorf's, Ella, that he also has been kind of pursuing, another married woman, and they'd exchanged these letters, and she'd sent him a painting of herself. And so today Erevanskaya is out and Countess Benkendorf is in, but her brother happens to be there for dinner. And so I don't really know anything about him. And and Dmitri's monitoring the situation with Pushin. So that's about it. We'll do the final entry for September tomorrow, and then we'll be going to he's going back to Erevanskaya tomorrow. Okay, and then we'll be going to October, and in October Dmitri will be a very, very busy fellow. He will be going hither and yon as a representative of the imperial family at the front, traveling multiple places in a single day. So things are about to take a different turn, but always interesting. Anyway, I hope to see you then. Bye.